In the late 1800s, small homesteading communities were rising along Biscayne Bay. Dade County consisted of the vast area between Indian Key and the Jupiter Inlet and contained less than 1,000 persons in 1890. Over the next few years, this area would experience rapid growth as one of America's last frontiers. As the 1800s came to a close, several influential pioneers would settle in the area. Julia Tuttle, along with William and Mary Brickell, who later convinced billionaire Henry M. Flagler to extend his railroad south along Florida's east coast, laying the foundations for a city on both sides of the Miami River. And with that, the city of Miami sprung up as if overnight, earning the town its nickname, the Magic City. Over the next century, the fledgling town would grow from a little more than 400 citizens in 1896 to more than 400,000 today. In that time, Miami has established itself as a major center and leader in finance, commerce, culture, and international trade. Miami is a tropical paradise and a business leader all in one. A great feat for a city that only recently celebrated 100 years. So it may surprise some to know that Miami has one of the most eventful histories of all young American cities. You can find that history here at MDC's Wolfson Campus. Founded in 1984, the Lynn and Lewis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives houses over 35,000 hours of videotape and 23 million feet of film. The Wolfson Archives is an official moving image repository and archives of the state of Florida and is one of the largest institutions of its kind in the United States.
The collection starts with historical films, home movies from the 1910s, and I think the earliest film that we have is actually the development of Miami Beach. We also have footage from Broward County, from Central Florida, from Cuba, so it's not just Florida or even Miami-centric. We are an archive that covers the entire region.
Lynn Wolfson helped found the Moving Image Archives, along with Ralph Rennick and historian Arva Moore Parks. Named in honor of Lynn and Lewis Wolfson II, the archives was created under the joint sponsorship of the Miami-Dade Public Library System, Miami-Dade College, and the University of Miami.
And we were founded by Ralph Rennick, who was the first newscaster in Florida. And his goal was to preserve all of the film footage that was part of his early career.
The Wolfson Archives can now be found in its purpose-built facility on the Wolfson Campus in downtown Miami. The Wolfson Archives is devoted to preserving film and video that records the history and culture of Florida. Footage from the collections have been used in feature films and documentaries, including The Cocaine Cowboys, The U, and Ken Burns' The National Parks. But this footage is also available for public viewing.
So we've been very fortunate in working with Miami-Dade County and the Division of Cultural Affairs to receive a grant for cultural programming. We use the grant monies from Miami-Dade County to put on a number of different events and series of presentations of the material from the archives, because the county agrees with us that it's important to share this, and it actually makes Miami a better place to live when we know about the history of our community.
Rewind is a program of informal, twice-weekly public screenings. The screenings are typically 15 to 30 minutes in length and are free and open to the public.
They start at noon and they go till 1:30 in the afternoon. And our curator, Kevin Nguyen, takes material from the collection, builds a theme around the material, and actually plays it during that hour. People who work downtown and also students at the Wolfson Campus, and anybody actually can come, bring your lunch, and sit down and watch some of our video and film history.
Our rewind screenings date back probably 20 years, maybe even longer. We used to do them when we were housed in the library in downtown Miami, and now we do them in our new home on Wolfson Campus. And the idea has always been just to open up the collection to people so they can see it. But when you've got moving images, you know, lots of people can relate to that, and lots of people can see that, and they can see where we were, where we've come. We have one sequence from 1984. cell phones were about 6 months old in Miami. It was in 1984. And the reporter says,
"Mobile telephones are in your future. If you don't have one now, you probably will have one in a decade," say the phone makers.
Later on in the story, he demonstrates one of these new really mobile phones, which is a phone built into a briefcase with an antenna sticking out of the briefcase. So to use your mobile phone, you dial it while it's attached to the briefcase, pull it out, put the antenna up, and he's walking down the street with the antenna out in the briefcase, and that's a mobile phone 30 years ago. And that, you get a bunch of people in a room who don't understand what you're talking about, all this, and then they see that and it's like, okay.
In the spring, the Rewind series included vintage video of South Florida women breaking barriers and changing their place in society in balancing acts. South Florida women across 4 decades. The historic film and video screened in March as a part of Women's History Month.
We just did a collection of clips that show kind of like the role and image of women developing from the 1950s, where they're primarily fashion models and Orange Bowl queens, to the 1980s, where they're more involved in society in general and they're doing bodybuilding, and it's like, it's changing a lot. So that's something you can show in this collection, how these things change.
The spring Rewind screenings also included Building Miami, featuring video of South Florida landmarks, many long gone, captured by unique TV news footage and vintage home movies. Presented during Dade Heritage Days, Building Miami is the second collaboration between the Wolfson Archives and the Dade Heritage Trust.
In addition to Rewind, we have special screenings. We try to have those in the evening so it reaches a different audience. We try to have those in different places sometimes when we can, so we can go out to an audience instead of always having our audience come to us. And those will cover different subjects, and sometimes they go into more depth because it'll be a little more concentrated than a Rewind screening, and it'll be longer. For instance, we're doing a presentation, just kind of a light talk with clips, called The Fontainebleau on Film. And that's about the Fontainebleau Hotel. But what it's really about is the way people who are filmmakers use the Fontainebleau as a location and put it in films in the 50s and 60s, and what the Fontainebleau kind of means.
Rewind screenings take place throughout the year, but if that's not enough of Florida's history for you, the Wolfson Archives also regularly updates their social media and YouTube sites with photos and clips. And you can learn even more about South Florida during their MDC TV program, Rewind.
A great reason to come to the Wolfson Archives and look at our material. It's not really to learn something. It's not to come here and get a lesson in history. One of the amazing things about our collection is that film and television is a particularly dynamic way of preserving this history and showing people it moves and it walks and it talks, and it kind of captures not only the way things looked, but the way people acted and the way people thought and the things people said. So that's a very dynamic way of recording history.
It's a window into our history, and it enables us to know where we were, where we are, and where we're going. Miami sometimes gets a bad rap of being a city without any kind of history. And my argument is our history goes back at least 2,000 years, if not more. When they take down one of these buildings, the old buildings downtown, sometimes they find old sites where there was an Indian settlement, especially around the mouth of the Miami River. We don't go around tearing buildings down to discover history ourselves, but what we do is we make available through the film footage a glimpse of what might have been in a particular place 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So that enables people to travel in time and to get a sense of what the city was like, what the journey was to get to the point where we are now.
So that's the excitement of putting this out to people, because to so many people it's completely alien. To a lot of people it's familiar. We did a program where we showed a show from WTVJ called The Plight of Pepito. It was part of their news series, and it was from 1961. It was about the incoming Cuban exiles, but they picked this little boy to represent the Cuban exiles, because he's a cute 6-year-old boy with big sad eyes, and he goes and he has to get a vaccination when he's going through. The gentleman who played Pepito when he was 6 years old showed up at the archives one day and said, "Hi, you have a show called Plight of Pepito?" "Yes." "Well, I'm Pepito." And he's still around, so we brought him in. But it's the story of people coming here, going through the processing center, and we had people in the audience who did that. We have so many times when we'll be showing material and there are people whose parents did that, whether it be that, whether it be something else. And the reaction that people get is terrific. It's visceral. Sometimes it will provoke memories, and you'll hear incredible stories from people that might not have shown up on television or newspapers or somewhere else because it's their personal stories and everybody didn't get time with a reporter or something like that. So not only is it an interesting record, an amazing record of the history as it was recorded then, but it prompts sometimes new history, pieces of history that you weren't aware of that come to people, that occur to people because they see, like, oh, I remember I used to go roller skating over there. I used to swim at that pool all the time. So that's an amazing facet of this collection.
The sun has always shone on this magic city. We're 1 million today. The planners predict we'll be 2.5 million by 1985, just a few chapters away in Miami's history book. As we hit 1 million and look around us and still think of what's to come, we can say with honesty, isn't it great to live in Miami? Good night.
Florida's history and culture are in safe hands here at Wolfson Archives. So don't miss the next screening for your chance to view some of Florida's most incredible history right here in Miami. For MDC in Focus, I'm Isabel Loggins.